Good morning, everyone. It's a Sunday morning, the 18th of May, and the long advertised multi day severe weather event continues with an upgrade today and a pretty serious event tomorrow, which is Monday as well. We'll start out by looking at the satellite loop as we always do. One system up north of New York State still spinning around. That was responsible for the outbreak 2 days ago, and a little bit of yesterday and also the day before. So we just had one day after another of severe weather. This morning we have isolated thunderstorms. Some of them are at severe limits, but most of them are staying pretty calm, moving from eastern Oklahoma into Arkansas, and evidence of another pretty strong jet stream coming in like this, one of two little waves that will affect the Central Plains today and tomorrow. Let's take a look at what the HRRR is looking at. This is a simulated radar. This is what one model thinks the radar will continue to look like over the next 48 hours, 42 hours actually. Notice the thunderstorms breaking out here in Kansas. These are expected to be the severe weather episode of today. And then if we wait toward the end of the loop here, we see another outbreak of storms on Monday. Here in Kansas, right here, and that's going to continue to move on. There it is, to the east into Missouri. That is Monday's activity. I want to remind you before we get into these upgrades of what these actually mean. So when you look at the maps, there's this really light green. That's really just thunderstorms. Then starting at 1 and going through 5, we have all these categories right here. They actually do have names. I usually refer to it as a 1 out of 5 chance, and it really is a matter of coverage and severity. And if you want to read the official definition, it's right here. But you have to have winds at least 58 miles per hour, 1-inch hail, or a tornado, or any three of those in combination will work. But they do, the SPC, Storm Prediction Center, break down the individual threats. I usually just focus on tornadoes. Much more significant probably, unless it's a widespread wind event. So with all that in mind, let's take a look at today's severe weather outlook. This is Sunday's, and the SPC took about, more than a half hour than they sometimes do to get this update out. I think it's because they were contemplating the moderate risks. This is an upgrade from yesterday. That's the 4 out of 5 chance, and that is in south central Kansas, basically just those areas just off to the west of Wichita, with a 3 or enhanced area covering a large chunk of the plains, and the slight risk extending all the way into Missouri later on tonight when that thunderstorm line gets developed and moves on in. Less certainty on that, but that'll be a solid line, but still something worth watching. I can zoom in on this and show you this is the same map, only zoomed in. So here's Wichita right here. Here's Hutchinson, Kansas here, and Dodge is about right here. So it's that triangle forming between those three where the dry line is surging and there's a warm frontal feature that'll be draped through here, and both of those are going to conspire to produce, I think, some pretty severe thunderstorms with probable tornadoes. Here's the tornado outlook. So they've upgraded this to a 15%. If you recall, 15% is the rating we had 2 days ago. That was the same day as the London, Kentucky, and St. Louis tornadoes. So it means that there is a pretty high probability, 15% chance within 25 miles of any given point. That's what this means right here of a tornado. That same moderate risk area is duplicated here with the tornado risk. But they are definitely thinking that that's a tornado induced threat that had upgraded that to a moderate, along with the other possibilities of hail and strong winds as well. What about the probability of a significant tornado? That is outlined here. That expands a little bit more. It does include the Wichita area, and doesn't quite back up to Garden City, but does just about include the Dodge City area, Hutchinson, Kansas, up along I-70 there. So that means a 10% chance or greater of an EF2 through an EF5. So those are the highest, 2, 3, 4, and 5, the highest 4 of the ratings for a tornado that you can have. So again, if you remember that hatched area for 2 days ago, did actually encompass all of the devastation of the tornadoes that happened 2 days ago. So a lot of times this is spot on. So it's something that needs to be basically paid attention to. And in the Great Plains, when the dry line is active like this, and I'll show you the dew points here in a minute, this is almost a no-brainer of an outbreak. The SIP severe weather probability for Sunday, that's just a broad brush. It just covers all this area here. That means any possibility of severe weather. But if we look at the CSU I'm sorry, we do have the SIPS information here. Now, they are looking back in the past, taking the exact pattern that we have and saying, hey, did we get tornadoes as an analog in the past? And we did, and they were centered right around Dodge City. That is close to what we call the triple point, and it's something I might want to focus today. I'm going on a storm chase, probably go 400 to Wichita, maybe a little bit more west of there, and then just park and see what happens. Got to leave early on a day like today, probably within the hour, to make sure I am able to shift gears if the situation changes. If you look at the CSU probability, this is a machine learning model. It centers the tornado probability just off to the west of Wichita, and I find that the SPC does put a lot of merit behind this forecast. And actually, the hail probability is very significant in that same area, so it's going to be a dodge today to make sure that I stay as south and east of storms as humanly possible so I don't get pounded by hail. But as storm chasers know, one of these days, especially if you do it a lot, I don't do it a lot, but storm chasers that do it a lot are used to replacing windshields. So there's that. And also a pretty high wind, significant probability in central Kansas there as well. I want to take a look at the Mesonet here in Oklahoma. This is fascinating because they have all these reporting stations, which is much more dense than you normally get just looking at the regular national airport reporting stations. So these are purposely set up in counties that have they're there for no other reason than to make sure that we have enough of them. No aviation interest, anything like that, but there's lots of interest in many states, agriculture, travel, commerce, these types of things. Anyway, so Oklahoma has its act together. Here's the 70-degree dew points. These were measured about 10 minutes to 8 this morning, and this is a pretty rich environment, low 70s. This is the time of year you kind of wait for because you are looking at a high instability when you have that kind of surface moisture. Notice the dry line, the dew points are only in the 30s up here in the extreme western part of the panhandle. And this sharpening of this dry line, the intersection with that and the warm front is going to be an interesting focus today. Here are the winds this morning, and these are going to get gustier. So you have already 15 to 20 mile per hour winds there just off to the around Lawton, Oklahoma, in that area. So that's going to keep getting worse with time. Now, let's take a look at the HRRR model for Cape. Cape is a measure of instability. There's a warm front right here and a dry line right here. So the triple point, that's where the SIPS tornado probability was high. That'd be worth getting to at 4 o'clock today. You'd have to travel across southern Kansas to get there, and that seems like something that is doable. And you can always go, correct yourself east and southeast if storms fire the string of pearls, so to speak, on down the line like this. So that's the Cape, and then the bulk shear that holds supercells together, all there. Notice that the wind's at 500 millibars. That's what these wind plots, and actually this is actually the shear plot, I'm sorry. But the fact that you see a westerly component to the winds and then southeast at the surface is a real good recipe for rotating storms, especially in the lower levels, which is why the tornado threat's a little higher. Now, that's today, so everybody in the Central Plains needs to be on pretty high alert, almost the highest severe weather probability there is. On Monday, this has shifted, even beginning yesterday, if you were paying attention, this has shifted east and it still maintains that. This is a strong area of risk of outbreak of a pretty severe squall line that will last throughout the Monday evening and into the overnight hours to encompass that 3 out of 5 threat area there. So that is the forecast for Monday. Almost all of Missouri, good chunk of Arkansas, central and eastern Kansas and Oklahoma, even as far south as Dallas. What's the tornado threat in there? That's a 10% risk within 25 miles. And again, the initiation is expected here, but it looks as if these storms will have staying power. Whether they stay as individual supercells, probably not. By the time they get to the Missouri-Kansas border, it'll probably be a solid squall line with embedded supercells, perhaps, maybe some spacing between them, or just a solid line with surges that often produce some violent tornadoes as well. They are not shy about the tornado prediction here. It mirrors what I just showed you, so the 10% chance of a significant tornado EF2 to EF5 encompasses that exact same area. So I live in Springfield here, so yes, we'll be watching that late on Monday very, very carefully. As far as SIP's overall severe weather threat, it mirrors the fact that the storms are expected to fire here, and then you can kind of see how it bulges eastward as that squall line progresses. Look at this. when we take a look at past setups that have looked like this and apply the current data to that, we get a 15%. This is pretty high for SIPs. In central Kansas to south central Oklahoma. That is, again, initiation time. That's where the storms are expected to fire. It looks as if maybe that might be a tad more east, but again, you have to take it seriously because we're looking at previous data, and that is one of the decision makers. But CSU always goes more west with this, and from Kansas City down to Oklahoma City, southeast Oklahoma, they are putting it at a 15% risk of tornadoes tomorrow. But this also goes all the way to St. Louis, something they don't want to hear. The hail threat very, very high, especially along the Kansas-Oklahoma border there tomorrow, with looks like a surging wind gust kind of situation there in eastern Oklahoma. So pretty bad. So then Tuesday, this all shifts east, and the Tennessee River Valley and the north part of Dixie under an enhanced risk 3 out of 5 once again. So this is a bad situation for them. This area here, as you know, if I can kind of roughly draw it right here, has been pounded by tornadoes, and maybe tomorrow morning I'll bring you that update. That area has just had it again and again and again and again, with the most recent tornadoes being here in St. Louis, and I believe London is right about here. But yeah, so Tuesday, those folks are, at least one of those towns is under a pretty high risk once again. SIPS verifies that with their severe probabilities, as does CSU. They are a little more east with their tornado probabilities, just south to the southeast of Nashville, maybe including Knoxville, Tennessee, and also the northern part of Alabama, Huntsville, Alabama, in that risk area as well. Then finally, after Tuesday, things settle down. Here's this probabilities shift to the East Coast, where that system finally begins to exit on Wednesday, and then to the high plains in Colorado. And the CSU model verifies all but the Colorado part of that for the Carolinas and Virginia on Wednesday. And then on Thursday, high plains, but the jet stream not real cooperative now, so this has shifted to a more localized possibility of severe weather on Thursday, where that particular part of Texas is quite good at producing large hail and damaging winds and tornadoes, even given modest forcing for such an event. Anyway, here's the NIU finally at this outlook. This comes out, and this is based on a composite of supercells. They just take each pixel and calculate through the 7-day period what the probability of a supercell is. And a supercell thunderstorm is a severe weather generator, basically, not just a garden variety thunderstorm. So pretty high probabilities. Again, this is reflected in all the forecasts I just showed you, because this is the first 7 days, although it's probably leaning much heavier toward the first 2 or 3 days of that outlook. And then May 25th through the 31st, it's not giving up. Still a high probability through Kansas, Oklahoma, down to Texas, including southwest Missouri. And then on June 1st through the 7th, still not really giving up. Still a high supercell probability for the beginning week of June. Thanks for watching today's edition of Severe Thunderstorm Outlooks. This is published every day after the morning Storm Prediction Center update. Also, remember to check that site off on day 1 because they update it fairly frequently. If you like this video, please like it. Also, you can subscribe to the channel for more content just like this.